Welcome to What is Good, a podcast from the Texas Baptist Christian Life Commission, where we explore contemporary cultural issues through a biblical lens. Micah 6:8 says that God has told us what is good, that we're to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with Him. So whether you're seeking a better understanding of how to live that out, or you're just curious to understand a Christian perspective of what's happening in our culture, we hope that you'll find today's conversation helpful as we discuss what is good.
Welcome to another episode of What is Good, the podcast from the Texas Baptist Christian Life Commission. I'm one of your hosts, the Associate Director of the CLC, David Sanchez. I'm joined today by our Public Policy Director, John Litzler. Hey, John.
Hey, David. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, even if it's only over the screen. It's been a while.
It has.
And today we have a great special guest who I'm excited to introduce to you. This is John Allman, someone who I met at a ERLC hosted event where they were doing a summit on sports gambling at Travis Avenue Baptist Church in Fort Worth. And John, welcome to our podcast. I'm ready to get into just some of our conversations.
Yeah, thanks. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so the reason we're having you on is because I think I'm just appreciative of your openness, your vulnerability, and your kindness even in sharing at the event that we were at and in further conversations that we've had, just about how you used to struggle with sports betting and gambling. And I thought it would be great to have you on. I remember at the event, you were like front and center at a table in the middle, and I was a back row Baptist. I was sitting at a table in the back, but you were also by yourself, and I was sitting with 3 or 4 people, a couple familiar faces that I knew. And so once we broke for lunch, I tried to practice the golden rule and thought, well, if I was by myself at a table, I'd want someone to come and sit with me. So I came up and sat with you, but I was kind of doing it for selfish reasons too, because I wanted to pick your brain. You had shared in response to what they were saying about the reasons people get into sports betting and gambling. They mentioned covetousness, and you had shared that covetousness was not primarily the reason that you used to gamble, that from the outside looking in, it might look like to some people like, oh, you're just wanting to own more stuff. You're wanting to live up the prodigal son lifestyle, before he ran out of money, not after, of course. But for you, you said that gambling, sports betting gave you a sense of identity. Could you elaborate on that again, please?
Sure. I've heard it said that Scripture, the Bible, doesn't have much to say about addiction, right? And I guess that's true in some sense, but Scripture does have a lot to say about idolatry. And in the ministry that I'm involved with, we basically say that addiction is a worship disorder. Addiction is idolatry. So if you think about idolatry, it's the idea of worshiping something less than the one true God, with the hope or belief that it will give us what we desire or what we think we need. So gambling or alcohol or drugs or sex or anything else, that can be the idol. But what is it that we're wanting from that idol? So escape is a desire for a lot of addicts, and I definitely gambled to escape. And I see escape as like a counterfeit form of peace. And then I have a couple more things to say on this topic, if I can, if that's all right.
Yeah, go right ahead. I'm enjoying all of it so far.
And then in Gamblers Anonymous, like the Bible, if you will, of Gamblers Anonymous is what they call the little yellow book. And one of the things they read in there often is it says, many gamblers have a strong inner urge to be a big shot. And that's definitely part of it for me. Like, long story short, I struggled with shame for much of my life, feeling like I didn't fit in. And the gambling subculture, that became a very attractive place to me, where maybe I could fit in. And I see that as a desire for significance and acceptance. And then one more thing that I loved about gambling was, especially sports gambling, and that was my thing, mostly horse racing, but the idea of outsmarting other people, that I know something that they don't, and I'm going to use this knowledge to win, right? I think that I loved being right even more than I loved winning money. And I see that as like a desire for wisdom or for knowledge. So, in going back to scripture, I think in James chapter 4, it talks about the distorted desires are at war within us. And we look to fulfill those things in the world rather than in God. But true peace, true significance, acceptance, wisdom, all of that, that's found in Christ. And I'm looking for it at the racetrack. So, and then I just want to say, that's not to say there's not a biological or physical aspect to addictions. I believe that there is in many cases. But those are strong influences. Yet ultimately, we're responsible for how we respond to those influences in our lives. So I hope that answers your question in some way.
Yeah, the idea of I'm better than someone because I know more than them or I outsmarted them. Although I can't relate to that with sports betting, I can relate to that in general. I can certainly relate to it in, my team was better than your team when we beat them, and that makes me better than you as a person. Yeah. Or, I used to play tennis in high school, and when you're one-on-one with another person, it makes you feel like you're a better person when you outplay them, even if they are more skilled, but just on that day you outplayed them. John Litzer, can you relate as well?
I do relate, yeah, and I have placed wagers on things before, and I really like what John had to say about how it's almost at some point, for me anyway, I know this isn't true for everybody, not about the money. I played fantasy sports with friends from college. Right. We had a college league for about 15 years. Actually, they still play. I dropped out. And part of the reason I dropped out is because of exactly what John is describing. It wasn't even about money. For a while, we didn't even have a buy-in to play. It was about the pride of the trophy. But I would spend hours at night researching waiver wire pickups, because if I got a player that hit and I knew it before the rest of the league did, boy, I felt smart. And boy, it made me feel accomplished. And because I played with some pretty sharp guys. The guys in my fantasy league were no dummies. Some of them do sports-related stuff for a living. And yeah, I felt a lot of pride and accomplishment when I discovered a player before they did, and that player succeeded and did well. So, John, what you're saying really does resonate with me and bring back a lot of feelings from when I was involved in that league.
As a follow-up question, could you share more of your story? Like, what was what started it all? What got you into gambling, and how bad did it get? How old were you when it started?
Yeah, sure. It started in high school. I was 18 years old when I was a senior in high school. There was a racetrack in our town, and after talking with you earlier, I think I looked it up, and it was 0.8 miles from the school to the racetrack, I believe.
Wow.
After school, some friends and I would walk down the street to the track, and you could get in free. There's 9 races a day. After 6 races, you get in for free. So that would line up with the end of school, and we'd go down there. I was old enough to bet. My friends were not, so I could place the wagers for them. So that's how I kind of got into it. And I remember the first time that I won what I considered a significant amount of money. It was the last race of the day, and I can still picture like waiting in line to get my money, and I was so excited. I think everybody in the place knew I had won. And when I cashed my ticket, the lady who gave me my money, she said, now, obviously observing my behavior, she said, now take that money and don't ever come back here.
Wow.
And I think I came back the very next day, like as someone who struggles with feeling like a loser, or why would I leave a place where I finally felt like a winner? So I think that's where I really got hooked, if you will. Started going during high school, won some money early on. all the feelings that came with that just met some deep desires within my heart.
Now, obviously, you can't just keep winning, because if everyone did that,
Of course.
they wouldn't make any money.
Yeah.
So how did it turn into a downward spiral?
That was many years later. I gambled on and off for 20 years, for over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
The downward spiral happened when I relocated from Illinois down here to Texas, and I was alone for several months while my wife remained home to sell the house and take care of all of that. So I had everything I wanted. Like Romans 1 talks about God handing us over to what we want. I had everything I wanted. I had time, I had relocation money, and I had a racetrack nearby. I even had online gambling opportunities back then. So I just went hog wild and gambled like I never did before. Ultimately lost more money than I had before. I had always been pretty sneaky, like deceit goes hand in hand with gambling. Mm-hmm. And I had gotten to the point where I was so desperate, I no longer cared about covering my tracks or hiding anything from my wife. I took out money that I knew she was going to see, told myself, well, I'm going to win, I'm going to pay it back. That didn't happen. I just kept digging a deeper and deeper hole, and came to the end of myself there at Lone Star Park on June 5th, 2004.
And again, just thanks for sharing your story with us and your openness and vulnerability. So you hit rock bottom. Where do you go from there? How are you able to get out of it?
Yeah, at that point, it was still just trying to appease my wife, honestly. I didn't want to stop for myself. I just wanted to appease her. So I called one of the 1-800-GAMBLER or something like that. Was directed to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting, and I started attending those meetings regularly. After a few weeks, it got worse, not better, because they started talking about, well, gambling is only a symptom, and the deeper problem is me. And I realized, yeah, this is what I've been running. I've been running from these things all my life. I've been running to gambling to get away from reality, if you will. And now you want me to deal with reality? So that was difficult until one man expressed pretty much the same feelings, and yet he said, I can't do this without Jesus Christ. And I had been away from the Lord for over 20 years. I grew up in the church. But that was, I always say, it's like I heard the name of Jesus again for the first time that day. And I believed that he could make a difference in my life. And that was the turning point.
That's powerful. That's a powerful story.
Yeah. Do you have any follow-up questions, John?
No, John was pretty thorough with this story. I was going to ask him what age he started. He said it was at age 18. I thought that was really interesting. You know, one of the things that I'm always concerned about is the way that it seems like companies today are targeting minors. And it was interesting too, John. I guess I'm curious. You said that you got to place wagers for kids that weren't old enough. You know, at 18, you were old enough, but maybe there were some 17 or 16-year-old kids hanging out to it too. And you had shared earlier at the beginning kind of the, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't want to misquote you, but kind of a place where you belong, certainly at the tracks. But did you also get a sense of belonging from being able to do something that those younger kids couldn't, and them kind of needing you to be the one to place their bets on their behalf and all that kind of stuff? Did you kind of get an inherent group of friends that would hang out with you at the tracks after school and stuff?
There was a community aspect to it. Now, some of those younger kids were actually more familiar with the racetrack than I was. Wow. Maybe they've been going with their father and things like that. And they were educating me in some way on the ways of the racetrack. although they weren't of legal betting age themselves.
I think one of the things that concerns me, it's a confluence of a lot of things happening in our culture all at the same time. The advancement of the internet and apps and easy accessibility on the phone. You know, one of the things I heard in John's story is the racetrack was 0.8 of a mile away. It was there. It was accessible. Well, now it's in everybody's pockets and on your phone. It is right there with you all the time. Talk about accessibility. But then one of the other things is we've become more isolated as individuals, as society. I think the way that John felt growing up, I think there are more young men that feel that way today than ever before. And a lot of them turn to communities on the internet or, online communities and stuff like that. And a lot of the communities they end up in are communities of people who wager, who engage in gambling or sports gambling. Sometimes you don't have to go to a casino and sit with people in person anymore to get that community feeling. You can get it through an app on your phone. And so I hear what John's saying, and I just wonder if those same things aren't true now, all these years later, but almost even magnified or exponentially increased with just advances in technology.
John, as someone who not only has recovered, or I'm not sure, would you say still recovering? Not sure how you would describe it, but also helping others. Would you agree with what John Litzler has said about how things have changed?
Certainly, I have a family that lives in Denver, Colorado, and obviously laws are different there, and so I've witnessed firsthand the availability of gambling apps, right? And you can't watch a baseball game or a football game without advertisements for gambling. Even the in-studio segments during the middle of the game, they're talking about wagers and the performance of the wager that they recommended before the game. So it's definitely more prevalent than ever before and more accessible than ever before. I think there's no doubt.
Yeah, and just more normative. I remember the first time when I was watching the news and the news reporter started reporting about a tweet someone put out. And I was like, what makes this news? Like, I thought the news was supposed to tell me what was happening, not what people are tweeting. And now it's the norm, and it doesn't even shock me anymore. It's like that's what gets people's attention. So that's what the news is. It seems like the same with sports betting. Like, it's everywhere now. It's all the time. It's constant. Although thanks to our Texas laws, we still don't, it's still not legal, right? How would you word it, John Litzler?
It's not legal in Texas. Now, that doesn't stop people from pushing it. You look at TCU partnering with sports wagering companies and the Dallas Cowboys partnering with sports wagering companies.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting is that in a state where it's technically not legal, people are still pushing. Organizations are still pushing. Definitely the online sports wagering groups, DraftKings and FanDuel, but also the casino effort hasn't stopped either. And so it's definitely Texas is seen by the gambling industry as a prize because there's just so much, they would say, potential here, an untapped market. It's interesting. On the one hand, they want to call it an untapped market. And then on the other hand, they want to say, well, everybody's already illegally sports wagering anyway with these foreign offshore companies. Why not bring it into the light and legalize it and let Texas take a cut and normalize it with regulated companies like DraftKings and FanDuel instead of these offshore companies? So on the one hand, it's an untapped market. Nobody's betting here yet. And on the other hand, everybody's already doing it secretly under the table.
Well, I guess the main reason I ask is because I have friends who are in places where it is legal. And as bad as the ads are for us here, I've heard that if it gets legalized, the ads just become unbearably relentless and they're everywhere and inescapable all the time.
Yeah, and it's a lot of dishonest, I'll just say dishonest advertisements about free wagers to start, free money to start, certain bets free, all that kind of stuff. But then you can't cash out if you do win for a certain amount of time because they're hoping you'll re-wager again during that period. So you may win, and then they say, yeah, but you can't have your winnings for 2 weeks. well, they're really counting on you re-wagering that money over the course of that 2 weeks.
We want it back.
Yeah. And so a lot of those things are not actually realized. And then there's also a lot of interesting tax stuff that goes on with that, where, by giving you those free wagers and stuff like that, they get to count them as losses tax-wise. Even if you lose the wager, they've given you a free wager. And anyway, there's just all kinds of stuff with that. It is, I promise, those ads, as good as they sound, they are helping the company. They are not free money for you as they make it sound when you start up your account.
Yeah.
So this question is meant a little more playfully, but John Allman, you help people on the ministry side to overcome their addictions, and John Litzler, you're on the policy side of it. Not so much legislating people's morality as it is trying to stop the predatory practices of gambling, I would say. Whose job is more important? Go.
Who gets to go first?
It's John
Allman's.
Allman's.
First,
it's
right?
John Allman's, and it's not particularly close.
Yeah, well, but you are a lawyer, so you know how to make arguments, which you see.
I was going to make a joke that, in Luke 15, there's 3 parables about lost things, and the lost sheep, the lost coin, the lost son, lost sons. And there's celebration when the lost thing is found, right? And it says, there's joy before the angels of God when one sinner repents. So I'm in the business where when there's a victory, all of heaven repents. So, but seriously, I mean, different people are gifted in different ways and focus in different areas. And we talk about in our ministry, like everybody has a heart, right? And we have a body, and we have a family, and we have a culture that we live in. And then there's a spiritual realm outside of that. And all of those things can influence us. But we can also intervene at any of those levels, intervene at the level of the body or the family or the culture. And I see what you're doing as attempting to intervene with political and social reforms. I think different people are called to focus in different areas.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know that it's a tongue-in-cheek type of question. It feels weird to say that one thing is more important when you're trying to work in concert together as parts of the same body, trying to work together from different angles. But for me, it is easily, in any area, including in this one, the people who are boots on the ground, looking in the face of people who are struggling and walking through them with it on a daily life are heroes, in whatever that thing is, particularly when it comes to any type of addiction, folks in AA or Celebrate Recovery, or whether it be Gambling Anonymous or anything like that. I'm excited to get to play a small part in helping, but I'm trying to influence, lawmakers and decision makers, and that's not the same as walking daily with somebody who's struggling with whatever. It doesn't even have to be addiction, any sin issue. That's hard. Those are challenges. So I'm super grateful for ministries like John's and people like John and what they do. And if we can do anything at a policy level to play a small part in making their job easier, that's what's a win for me. If John's talking about how when they reach somebody, all of heaven celebrates. All I'm trying to do at the policy level is make it easier for John to be able to do what he does and reach people so that they can have more of those types of celebrations on a weekly or daily basis.
Yeah, that's well said. But we also appreciate you, John, because sometimes your work is very thankless. And sometimes the victories at the Capitol are short term, and then 2 years from now we're gonna have to fight them again. All over again. They keep wanting to do it for some reason.
There's no shortage of money on the pro gambling side. It's a battle that we'll be doing over and over again until we lose or until Jesus comes.
Yeah, but we could also say that there's no way to really measure how you're helping someone by keeping them away from gambling before a legal age, or we can't say who we're helping in that terms, but certainly it is help.
This may be a maybe I shouldn't bring this up. We can cut it if we need to, David, because it may be controversial. But you know how when COVID first started, there was that phrase people were tossing around about like flatten the curve or whatever, because there was going to be such a sharp incline, and they were don't overwhelm our hospitals, don't overwhelm our healthcare workers, like anything we can do so that we can get out in front of this. If we legalize gambling in Texas, the number of hotlines that are going to be needed, the number of ministries that are going to be needed, the number of churches and people doing what John does that are going to be needed is just going to skyrocket all at once, exponentially. I'm trying to remember, I can't remember the name of the organization, but they estimate 600,000 Texans would develop a gambling addiction. So 600,000 people that would develop a gambling addiction that would, not all of them, but many of them at some point would be looking for help. So I kind of see myself as trying to help flatten the curve, slow the curve, like whatever we can do to stop an influx of people getting addicted. One, it will help their lives, but two, to help people like John not get overwhelmed by just this sheer epidemic of gambling addiction in Texas. And like you say, David, it's hard to know, it's hard to know if you're, exactly how many people you're helping when you get a stop a bad policy, a preventative type measure. But you hope you're helping a lot of people when you do.
Really well said. So, John Allman, going back to the ministry you do, which we're real appreciative. I'm eager to hear more about it. Could you share more about your ministry and how you mentor people who are struggling with addictions and not just gambling, correct?
Correct, yeah. So I'm a member of Citizens Church in Plano, Texas, and I'm involved in two different programs there within the same ministry. One is simply called Recovery. Think of Celebrate Recovery, and the other we call Steps. So Recovery is our open door ministry where we have issue-specific groups for things like chemical addiction, but we also have emotional struggles, sexual struggles, grief and loss groups, trauma and abuse groups, marriage troubles groups. And then we have more generalized groups that we just call life struggles if your issue doesn't necessarily fit into one of our specific groups. So that's our weekly open door ministry. And then we also have Steps, which is an intensive discipleship program, and that's a 13-week program. We start with the 12 steps of the non-gospel recovery culture, such as AA. We kind of deconstruct those and reconstruct them from a biblical perspective. So what's true about that step, but what does God say in His Word to enhance this step? So in that program, we pair people up with mentors, and the mentor guides them through this 13-week process that includes assessments that are designed to really reveal what's going on below the surface. What is the root of our struggles? So those are the two ministries I'm involved with. We say the philosophy of the ministry is the church engaging the culture with the gospel.
I love that.
Yeah, that's really cool. If I knew someone who struggled with gambling and maybe they were trying to keep it hidden, but I had found out, or they weren't keeping it hidden, but what advice would you give for how to approach them?
Yeah, so I think people need to want help. We can't fix anyone, right? One of the things we often say is if you're here because someone else wants you to be here, or you're here because you're trying to fix someone else, it's probably not going to work, right? So the person would need to be at the point where, yes, they're struggling, but they want to stop. And in that case, I think triggers are always a good place to start. Like, what's going on in your life when you feel the urge to gamble? And that helps us, again, identify the root of what's really going on in our heart. So, yeah, that's where I'd go. And even to keep a journal of those things when I'm feeling the urge to gamble. What's going on? Am I frustrated with my job? It may be many different things, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, what are the triggers? And triggers are innocuous. They're not necessarily sinful in and of themselves, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It could just be, am I bored? Or for you when you moved, like, am I feeling alone and isolated?
Exactly.
So if it's someone who doesn't want help, is the best thing I can do is say, hey, look, I think what's going on is a problem. Here's A, B, C, Y. I see it hurting you. When you're actually wanting help, let me know and I'll be there. In a non-condescending way.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's the same approach with gently calling out sin in anybody's life, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
First take the log out of our own eye, right? Before we go and try to help our brother get the sliver out of theirs. So it starts with a humble introspective look at ourselves, right? And then to approach them, to speak the truth in love, right? Which I can easily speak truth in a non-loving way, or
Yeah.
I can do what I call love that is absent truth, but we really need the power of the Spirit, I think, to help us speak the truth in love to someone who's struggling. So it takes a lot of discernment and prayer, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. Doing it prayerfully. Yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah, John, I was just curious if you feel, it sounds like your ministry is done in a church context, which is wonderful. Yes. I think that's great. In general, do you feel like the church, not your church, but all churches in general tend to overlook the harms of gambling and gambling addiction? Is it something that most of our churches kind of pass over or don't think about or don't talk about? Does it lurk in shadows, or do you think churches do an okay job responding to that struggle?
I don't think that churches are saying much in general, specifically about gambling. And I think in general, when churches do address specific sin, it tends to be in more of a moralistic way, like good Christians don't do this, so don't do this. Whereas I feel like if our hearts are really deceitful and desperately wicked, we can make an idol out of anything. So I think the best churches address the underlying heart issue and don't necessarily focus on those specific sins. That's the way I feel about that, John.
That's good. That's really good. And I'll tell you that moralistic argument that you're saying that many churches make, when they do choose to bring it up, they bring a moralistic argument. This is wrong, so don't do it. That, I'll just tell you from my perspective as a lobbyist at the Capitol, that doesn't carry the day. They don't want to legislate morality. So when you're pushing back against the expansion of gambling in Texas, they don't want to hear, well, because it's a sin and the Baptists think it's wrong. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that people would consider vices that for example, like alcohol. They don't just ban it; they regulate it. They set an age at which they think you can do it responsibly. And back to the very first thing that John opened our podcast with today when he was talking about idolatry and how the addiction to gambling is kind of a form of idolatry, where you're putting something before God and trying to get that feeling, whether that be a feeling of success or belonging or whatever, from something other than God. And if that's the case, and I think he's right, I think that's true, then that could be anything. I mean, I've got idols all in my life where I try to replace a feeling that I'm supposed to get from God with something else. And it's something that's usually not banned or restricted. And so it's like, I can make playing video games an idol, because I try to find my online community with people in the video game instead of with God or what it's same as gambling.
Now, John.
I'm not trying to attack. I'm just saying it could be anything. But nobody bans video games. They're not illegal.
Well, I was going to say,
you're not going to ban video games over it.
There's not a law banning the consumption of an entire container of cookie dough in one sitting because you feel sad instead of singing psalms.
Well, and a lot of the stuff that is particularly harmful, we just put an age limit on it, And so I think one of the common arguments to expand gambling in Texas is, well, if you can't do it till you're over 21, people are adults by then. They should be able to make their own decisions. I guess I want to ask too, John, I didn't tell you I was going to ask this question in advance. It's probably not wise to ask a question I don't know the answer to, but Do you oppose the expansion of gambling in Texas, bringing those sports wagering apps or casinos to Texas? And if so, I'm curious as to why, not based on a moralistic argument of just, well, it's wrong for people to do that,
I think the best argument that I've heard is about the predatory nature of it. And I can see how something I learned at the forum that we attended together, that these betting apps use algorithms similar to social media and appeal to you based on your history and of wagers. Well, now you've been on this before, and this similar thing's happening today, and then now it's going to present you with that opportunity. It's going to actively push, right, opportunities. So I think that predatory nature of it is the best argument, and I can see, I would say, definitely a need for regulation. And then also arguments around domestic abuse, among the rate of domestic abuse among gambling addicts. Well, there's an innocent victim, right? Things like that, I think, are the arguments that would appeal to me.
I think the rates of domestic violence going up is a very strong one. I'm glad to hear you mention that. Before I do what I do now, I was just a attorney practicing in a lot of different areas, and one of the areas I did a little bit of work in was bankruptcy. And man, it's hard to see bankruptcies and what leads folks there, and kind of their whole life on a piece of paper, all their assets, all their things, and what they're keeping and what they're not keeping, and what they have to pay to creditors, and the number of divorces that usually come in as a result of the financial stress of bankruptcy. And one of the things that is really hard for me to see are the increases in bankruptcies that come with gambling addiction, and the damages in particular to small businesses. Young men trying to start a small business, maybe it's a welding business or a woodworking business or something, and it seems to be going okay until, in an effort to cover up personal losses out of their personal bank account, they have to borrow money from the business to put into their bank account so that it doesn't look like their bank account's dropping, and then the next thing you know, the business is filing bankruptcy. And those are the types of things that I think should be, to an economic friendly state, to a pro-business, friendly state like Texas. Those are the types of things I think should be more compelling to our lawmakers than just gambling bad. These people are making poor decisions for themselves,
Even what is legal now, put a game room in a strip mall and see what it does to the businesses around it. So, yeah. But that's digressing. That's chasing around it. John, we want to thank you so much for being on and sharing your experience and giving us some advice. I really appreciate it. I feel like I learned a lot from your wisdom and what you had to share.
Yeah, me too. And I'm curious if there's any way, if anyone listening to our podcast wanted to support you in your work or what you're doing, if there's any opportunity maybe for them to do that.
Sure, yeah. So our recovery pastor at Citizens Church, he does have a nonprofit called Gospel Recovery Network, and it's gospelrecoverynetwork.com. Part of what they do is equip other churches to start up recovery ministries. So check out the website.
Great. Yeah.
gospelrecoverynetwork.com.
We'll put a link to it in the show notes as well. So that if you're listening to this, you can go look in the show notes, find a link to that, learn more about the amazing work that they're doing. I just find people want to be part of the solution. It's good for us to talk about it. It's good for us to raise awareness. And then the next step is, how can we help be part of the solution?
Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks again. We do like to end our podcast by just talking about what is good. It's something good that's going on in the world. It could be a personal story or family or church community related, something small or something huge, just something positive for which we're thankful for God about. Who would like to go first? Share their what is good.
I can go. We have just over 30 men and women completing the STEPS program this week.
Wow.
So they've hung in there for the 13-week semester. And then next week, we have, at the end of each semester, we have what we call a celebration service. And this is basically a night of testimony, one of my favorite times of the year, where we get to hear stories of what God has done in the hearts and lives of these men and women. So I think that's a pretty good thing.
It is, and that's a big group.
Typically, we cap it right now at 40 per semester, and there's a small group component to it. So we typically have 2 men's groups and 2 ladies groups, and cap the whole thing at 40.
Well, I don't know if that means you started with 40 and finished with 30, but I would say a 75% completion rate after 13 weeks is a tremendous success.
Yeah, that's why I say just over 30. I'm not sure the exact number in there. We did start with close to 40, and a couple people do typically drop out along the way, but
yeah,
we don't look at that as a failure, because I believe God's working in their lives, and they heard something they needed to hear, and maybe they'll be back.
Yeah,
you're right. That is good. We celebrate that with you. That is a wonderful thing.
Cool.
Yeah. I'll go next. John's mine's less spiritual, so you won't feel too burdened, John, after this.
I appreciate
John
that.
Litzler. I was outvoted this summer by my wife and daughter, so we have a dog now.
Hey!
Oh, nice.
But the what is good is not the
not you getting outvoted.
No, yeah, it's not that either. It's what my daughter chose. So they'd looked at breeds and stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, how much is this going to cost us to get like the type of dog she wants? They ended up going to a shelter and getting a stray who has heartworms, and that was the dog that they chose. A 2-year-old. They think it's German Shepherd and Husky. And so it was a bigger dog than I thought we were getting as well.
That's big.
But the love and care that I've seen my wife and daughter pour out on this little creation of God's has really warmed my heart. And I'm like, you know what? I think for all the stress of throwing a stray dog into our home, I think it's really doing our family some good to care for someone collectively, and it's been a lot of fun.
That's neat. Did y'all give it a name, or did you take the name it already had when you adopted the dog?
Yeah, it's a obscure Gravity Falls reference. That's a cartoon on the Disney Channel. We named him Tyrone.
Oh, I love that. Was that your decision, or a family decision, or your daughter's decision?
It was my idea, but it was one of many, like in a list.
Yep.
And it was more like when we met him, it was like, yeah, he's definitely a Tyrone.
Nice. So my what is good is not personal, but I saw a story about these guys that were in a motorcycle group, these bikers that were involved in an accident, and this little girl and her mom saw, and the mom is an RN, and the mom ran out to the road and started trying to, help how she can, do first aid, be a response till the ambulance got there. And the video I saw was a year later, and this little girl who's like 7 or 8 years old has a lemonade stand. And the biker gang, all of them come pull up in their motorcycles, and they park, and they buy her lemonade stand out of lemonade. It's like a thank you to the family for the help they had rendered a year before. And it just warmed my soul. It's just a positive story in the news. I wish more stories like that got headlines, but that's my what is good. I'm the kind of pay it forward and what goes around comes around kind of treating people well. I love it.
That is so awesome. Well, thanks again, John Allman, for joining us. Thanks, John Litzler, for being here as well. And we hope you guys enjoyed it. Check out the show notes for the link to the gospelrecoverynetwork.com. Or if you heard that, just, swipe over on your phone and go there yourself and check it out. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye, everyone. So, John, is it safe to say after your hernia surgery that I'll be doing the heavy lifting in this podcast?
I can't lift anything over 10 pounds. All the heavy lifting is you.
I mean, I've got a bad disc in my back. I think we'll let John Allman handle
that. Sounds like a win right there. That sounds like a win. That's the goal of the guest, right? On a podcast is to do all the heavy lifting.
Heavy lifting.
I'm just picturing something weighing like around 18 or 19 pounds and you and I looking like, okay, if we hold it together, me from one end and you from the other, maybe we could make it across the room.
Oh my.